Hello and welcome to the Final Frontiersman, a YouTube channel about all things Trek. I'm Bill, and today we are looking at and reviewing the documentary To the Journey, looking back at Star Trek Voyager. This was a crowd-funded documentary by the same people who created What We Left Behind, I believe is the title, the Deep Space Nine documentary, as well as I Am Spock, and a variety of other Trek-based documentaries. At the time, which I think was almost 4 years ago now when the crowdfunding started, and it might still be true, it was the highest funded documentary ever. So if you've seen the Deep Space Nine documentary, and if you haven't, maybe I should do a video about that. It's amazing. It is so in-depth, and it adds a lot to just the legacy of Deep Space Nine. So when I heard the same people were going to do a documentary for Voyager, which is my show, it's the show I love very, very much. I love all the Star Trek, but Voyager has a very special place in me, and maybe I'll mention in this video. I was ecstatic. I backed it right away. I had to get in on it. So 4 years later, backers have finally received a digital copy to view, or at least online you can view it as a backer. So I watched it a couple times now, and I would like to talk about it as a review. But as I said, it's a digital one for backers, so it's not released to everyone yet, and the physical media still is not ready yet. The physical DVD Blu-ray is going to come with a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and I don't know how much extra is there, so I can't talk about that. I can only talk about the main documentary itself. Since this is a review, possibly I'll still be doing the alert system as normal. Yellow alerts for things to keep an eye on, red alerts for the things that I think are great, and the rarely used black alerts for the groundbreaking stuff. I'm not sure what kind of images I can or I will put on screen, but just in case, I'll jump into the small window and let's find out. So this is To the Journey, looking back at Star Trek Voyager. It's a documentary about the 7 years of Voyager. So getting into it, just look at my notes. My notes are split across on digital and handwritten here. So glancing down at it, first let me say some of the good things about this that I really like. And like, oh, why is he saying some of the good things? It starts off really strong, in my opinion. I think the beginning of this documentary is really good as it's setting up the start of Voyager and how it was going to be the flagship property of the new United Paramount Network. I remember all this back in the day when Voyager was first coming out. What I didn't know back in the day, and which over the years, of course, I heard about and I seen things, was, of course, many of you already know, there was a different actress hired before Kate Mulgrew to play Captain Janeway. It was, I believe she's a French actress, I don't think French-Canadian, but French actress Geneviève Bujold. And she was there for, I think, 2 days before she quit. And of course, over the years, seen a lot about her, seen some of the scenes that they filmed. But this was really the first time I've seen this much of her completed scenes, this much footage of this other actress in the role of Janeway put together. And there is a lot of great talk by the actors and by the people behind the scenes about how it felt bringing her in, because of course Geneviève was such a big movie star and like very world renowned. It would have a great impact for Star Trek to have someone like this on there. And she is a very good actress. She is a very good actress. If you see her in the movies, you can see the just variety of her performances and her range that she has in that as an actor. But if you watch the footage they have of her as Janeway, I think it's easy to see she is not comfortable in the world of Star Trek. And I saw footage of her as Janeway before I saw, or before I knew that was her, I saw in older films. And I would not have guessed that she was as good an actress as she truly is by seeing this. She doesn't seem comfortable at all. And that's what they talk about a lot, just how lost she was. And one of the great points, sure, let's do it. Red Alert, one of the great points in the beginning is in the interviews, they interview, maybe not guest star, but kind of supporting actor for episode 1, Caretaker, Scott McDonald. I was so excited to see that because he appears in a variety of Star Trek properties. He does a lot more voice work, but you recognize him if you see him. And of course, when I saw him in Caretaker 30 years ago on the bridge there, I'm like, oh my God, it's that guy. Of course, I didn't know his name at the time, but it was that guy. They have a great interview with him, and I was really captivated by getting his point of view, because I've heard Garrett Wong talk about Genevieve's time there. I heard Tim Russ talk about it. I've heard the main stars mention what it was like working with her those couple of days before she quit. But this was the first time I heard the story from a completely new perspective. And Scott McDonald, he had a lot to offer. It's, in my opinion, the interview with him, as short as it is in comparison to the entirety of the documentary, it was probably the juiciest and most interesting interview of the entire video, the entire 2 hours. When I watched it a second time, again, as soon as it came back, first time I saw it, I was like, oh, this is great. And I watched the whole thing, had it simmer for a while. When I went back to watch it a second time, it struck me the same way. I was so, not only was I happy to hear him, see him get interviewed and share so much, but it was a rich and detailed and new story that I had never heard before. So the beginning of this, when it's talking about the rough early days of Voyager, especially with Genevieve, was some of the real meat, the juiciest part of this documentary. And sadly, it gets out of the way so early as it moves on. Now, I'm not saying that the rest of the documentary is bad. I'm just saying this part here was probably the deepest and most worthy of a documentary than a lot of the stuff that follows, which is the bulk of the entire video. And I think the reason why, and let me get this out of the way right now, let's stand down Red Alert. That was for you, Scott McDonald, Red Alert. A lot of the stuff that we see throughout this documentary, if you're a fan of Voyager, if you're a Star Trek fan, if you watch a lot of behind the scenes stuff, if you watch a lot of convention thing, if you are one of the blessed ones who get to go to conventions, not like this guy over here, if you're actually able to attend a glorious Star Trek convention and see these wonderful actors speaking on stage and telling their stories, you've heard, I would say, 99% of everything that pops up in this documentary before. That 1% might be right there at the beginning. And like I said, I never heard Scott McDonald speak on this. I never even heard him interviewed for Star Trek before. And I am so glad and so happy to the makers of this documentary that they included him and they gave him a very significant portion of this opening to share that story. Everything that follows is good, but I feel like I've heard it before. So let me just go in to some of these little details, the things that I really thought stood out, maybe that I liked, but also I do have a lot of complaints. And that's not what I want to say about this documentary, but I want to phrase this that I like the documentary because I'm a Voyager fan. I'm a Star Trek fan. I love hearing these stories. I love seeing these behind the scene things and this speaking from the heart, speaking for like your opinion for real, hearing the actors say how they truly feel. I love that. I'm down with that. I just feel that I've heard most of it before. Let me jump in with, again, some of the things that I like. Again, Scott McDonald, that was great. But I'm going to come back to him kind of later with one of my gripes as it comes up. One thing you hear a lot from almost all of the actors. There's a couple notable exceptions. Kate Mulgrew, of course, talking about how important it was for her to be Janeway, how important it was for her to be the first female lead of a Star Trek series, what that means. And it goes on, especially at the end of the documentary, there's a great section about pretty much the legacy and how Janeway has inspired and affected the lives of so many girls and young women growing up, and introducing them to science and leadership and pushing them in those directions because she served as a role model. And Kate Mulgrew, of course, in this documentary, she talks about that. She mentions that stuff, but also we hear the familiar story of, we've heard before that she made sacrifices for her family to take on the role of Janeway. She pretty much had to abandon her 2 sons for 7 years while she focused on doing Star Trek. And she mentioned many times before at conventions and other stories of how her boys, they have a good relationship now, but at the time they were angry with her. They still have never seen any Star Trek Voyager, because that's the thing that took their mother away from them. And that's powerful stuff. And why I bring it up here, even though it's well known, it's well documented, when she even mentions it in this documentary all these years later after hearing it so many times, you can see in her face, you could see in her expression, no matter how clearly she expresses it, you can see that pain is still there 30 years on, as a parent who knows that she hurt her children for the sake of her art. And that's not to make her sound selfish, because, as I said, the beauty of her art is inspired so many, especially young girls and young women around the world, and gave them the courage, the motivation, and the inspiration to go into fields they might have not gone into otherwise. And that's a wonderful thing, but it's a double-edged sword. It's bittersweet because of the sacrifice she had to make in her own personal life. And I'm glad they brought that up. I'm glad you got to see that. And again, Kate isn't like crying over it, but you can see the expression. You can see in her eyes, even if she's not showing that emotion, that pain is still there. And I think that's something that needs to be acknowledged, that needs to be respected, because a lot of people can't do that. I as a parent, I don't know if I would be able to step away from my children for that long of a time and miss that much of them growing up for something I'm passionate about. It takes a commitment, and that's why she is a true professional, and I have to respect that, while at the same time also sympathizing and empathizing with her for that. Now, the documentary from this point forward, after we get this great opening and that, it does go into so many little topics, and it will go into 7 and 9. Again, we're talking about empowering women. 7 and 9, they mentioned the controversy of bringing her in because Kate Mulgrew is supposed to be this role model for women. She is the lead, and then clearly, unmistakably, because the ratings are not where they want it to be, they bring in eye candy. And it sucks to say that, but that's exactly why they got Jeri Ryan. She is, by most standards, gorgeous. She was back then, she is now. I'm not saying the other ones of the cast aren't, but that was the reason why they brought her in. That was the reason why they brought in a sexy Borg. You don't think a sexy Borg, although Ellis Krieg wasn't that bad as the Borg Queen in First Contact. She was still terrifying. She wasn't in a skin-tight catsuit looking sexy the whole time. That was why she was brought in, and I'm so glad that many people in the documentary, as they're talking, they acknowledge that was the reason why she was brought in, but the saving grace was unbeknownst to them, or icing on the cake, Jerry Ryan is an amazing actor. She took a position that was just meant to be, as I said, eye candy to raise the ratings, and she elevated this character and gave us some of the most dramatic moments, dramatic interaction, especially her and Janeway on screen, her and the Doctor on screen. There's so many powerful moments, and even now, continuing 30 years later in Star Trek Picard, the legacy is continuing. That is all due to the true talent of Jerry Ryan. And I'm glad they acknowledge like the really selfish and very surface level reason why they brought her in, but realizing they lucked out because they got someone who was far beyond what they expected for that role. And we lucked out as Star Trek fans, and especially Voyager fans. So really, really happy about that. They also mention, as is well known, Kate Mulgrew did not like Jerry Ryan coming in. There was a lot of tension. Apparently it was really bad on set, and you get more of this if you watch convention panels, if you could find them on YouTube, private interviews, one-on-one interviews. They mention it here. They bring up that it was an issue, and there's a great story about Kate Mulgrew's mother visiting the set and how she pretty much just lets it slip freely how Kate feels about Jerry. But they really don't dwell on it. They mention that it exists, and they mention that it is now behind them. They made up, and they're moving on. And that's a key element of this documentary. Kate Mulgrew and Jerry Ryan, their little problem there. Jennifer Lien, Kess, the one who Jerry replaced when she was fired from the show. She had a lot of personal issues. She had a lot of personal issues years after the show. Run-ins with the law, and I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to follow suit of the documentary. I'm not going to spread the rumors or fan the flames of that, but there were a lot of issues there. There were a lot of problems. They mention that. They address it. But the key word is they mention it. They do not go into detail. They do not dwell on it. They do not share any personal or painful stories. They'll do little anecdotes, but they're not going to delve into the nitty-gritty of it like you see in the Deep Space Nine documentary, where there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of anger. And I don't want to talk too much about that documentary, but you hear a lot of sincere, honest opinions and feelings coming from all the actors on that show of things that they didn't agree with, they didn't like. We don't get that here. I think one of the reasons is they want to move on beyond these problems. They do not want to dwell on. They do not want to spread rumors. They do not want to dredge up old grudges. They want to focus on what is good, what is positive, what is great about the legacy of Voyager and the journey that they went on. And when I watched this at first, I was a little disappointed when I got to the end, because once again, comparing it to the Deep Space Nine documentary, like, this is so surface level, and it truly is. It's so surface level. It almost doesn't feel like it needs to be a documentary, because they're not giving us anything new. They're not sharing anything deep, anything truly sincere. But thinking about it and talking with other people about it, reflecting, the name of the Deep Space Nine documentary, which I think is correct, What We Left Behind. So in the title itself, it's telling you it's dwelling on the past. It's showing you that there are unresolved issues. There are problems. It wasn't clean. It wasn't happy. And Deep Space Nine is certainly not a happy series. It certainly doesn't have a happy ending. It's what they left behind, and they're going back to explore that, to grab that, to deal with it, to face it head on. This one is called To the Journey. It's a celebration. Why would you bring up the negative stuff when you're celebrating? You don't go to a celebration and talk about the bad things and dwell on that. You acknowledge they were there, but you say, we've gone beyond that. We have grown past that. We enjoyed the journey and we grew over time. And looking at it from that perspective, that this is not about the detail and the problems, what they had go through. It's about appreciating that they had the journey and enjoying the fact that they got to the end and they gave us something worth celebrating 30 years later. So because of that, I can't be too angry at the documentary for not going into these scandalous tabloid type negative aspects of the series. However, seeing and hearing all the stories that we've already heard before, it sometimes, as I said, made it feel such a surface level documentary that wasn't really, I don't know if it justified itself, the years it took to make it. And a lot of that too, like, let me be perfectly honest. I understand this was being filmed when the pandemic happened. So that's out of their control. So they had very limited time to get people one-on-one. I think most of it took place at a convention, possibly on the cruise, the Star Trek cruise. And so that really dictated how this was being made. And perhaps that is also an explanation for other gripes I'm going to bring up as this goes on. But it still feels like they could have given us more. I want to say again, I want to repeat because I don't like being negative or sounding negative for too long. I am happy with this documentary after watching it twice. I'll be watching it a third time soon and probably fourth time shortly after that. I'm happy with the documentary, but I am not satisfied. And that is what I want to express here. The lack of satisfaction because of the content that's missing. So going back to the whole surface level thing, there's so much about it, which I say, if we're going to be celebrating the journey, let's look back on the great moments. Okay, if we're not going to look at the negative moments, let's look back on the great moments and let's give them their time to shine. Let's look back on the big moments and give them their time to shine. Sulu and the Excelsior. We got one of the most amazing episodes of Voyager when it happened back in the day, where they practically refilmed the scenes from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, to include Tuvok into those scenes for the story. That was such an amazing episode, and they bring it up here, they mention it here. We get a brief chat with George Takei. God, I'm getting confused now with how bad his name is always mispronounced. So they have him here. But that's it. Again, surface level. They bring it up. Like, yes, it happened. Moving on. Like, we know it happened. We saw the episode. Let's reflect on it. Let's celebrate it for what it is. Tuvix. They brought up Tuvix. I hope they would bring up Tuvix, because that is 30 years later. People are still arguing, fighting, debating over it. They mentioned the debate in the video. They could have gone deeper, but I think, again, it's been covered. It's been done to death for 30 years. But this is the great place to focus on. The actor who played Tuvix, I don't recall his name, and apologies, I don't know exactly where he is currently. I pray he's still with us. Oh my God, 30 years is a long time. They didn't interview him, as far as I remember. I could have blacked out, but why not have him? I don't think I've seen his perspective on the issue. I've heard the other actors talk about it. I heard tons of fans talk about it. I don't know if I heard his, even if it's archive footage. I would like to have seen that. Give us more. We're celebrating the journey. So don't speed us through it. It's not a speed run. That's another little gripe I had. I feel like I'm complaining. I'm happy with it. I enjoyed what I saw. Please remember that. But it's like they're speed running the documentary, and the segues between the segments, I don't even know if you could call it segues. It just, they happen. And I want to bring up a joke of like, I forget what show it was from, somebody who was bad at segues. And that's kind of what it reminded me of, like the strong start we had here. But then it would be like almost stream of consciousness. It would be like talking about 7 and 9, like Jerry Ryan comes onto the show and she's so great, and like she had great interaction with the doctor who was a hologram. He got his mobile emitter, which allowed him to roam free of the ship, and that allowed him to explore more stories there, because he used to have a lot of time with Kes when she was in there, and Jennifer Leon. Like, I thought we were talking about 7 and 9. Like, we're on like 5 topics away right now. It like just keeps bleeding into the next section. There's not many clear breaks showing where the topic is going to shift, where something new is going to come in. It just keeps coming at you. It's like what are we talking about? I thought we were talking about the doctor, but suddenly Neelix is cooking and they haven't mentioned the doctor's name in like 10 minutes. So is it Neelix now? So there were moments like that. Speaking of Neelix, let's do it. Red alert. Ethan Phillips is still as hilarious as ever. If you've ever seen any of his interviews, any of his talks, this man is a comedic genius. Perfect wit, perfect timing. He shines every time he's on screen in this documentary. Always going to love Ethan Phillips. Robert Picardo too, putting those two of them together, because Robert Picardo read for Neelix. He didn't want to be the doctor. They have a great exchange there, like showing those two together. But it's fun watching. Again, it's fun. I love these actors. I love these characters. That's why I've been following them for years. I just wanted to get something new, something fresh, something different, something more explored about the series. Stand down, Red Alert. That leads me to probably my biggest gripe. There are so many supporting characters, guest characters, one-shot characters, background characters that were so important to the story of Voyager, and they're either barely covered, glossed over, or not even mentioned at all. And this is probably the thing that bothered me the most about the whole documentary. Like Seska, we get so little of her. Early years of Voyager, Seska was the thing. Plus Anthony DeLongis, who played Maj Kala. Seska and Maj Kala. They were the huge antagonists in the first 2 years of Voyager. Nothing. Basically nothing. Anthony DeLongis is not there. And I'm a huge fan of his from Highlander as well. Star Trek and Highlander, 2 franchises I love. I want to see him. I want to see, even again, if it's archive interview, I don't care. They use archive interviews in the other documentaries because they have to in some situation. Where is he? Seska, very little. Who else? Lieutenant Carey. They bring the poor man back in season 7 just to murder him after he was there so much in the early seasons. Nothing about him. Ensign Suter, Brad Dourif, powerful actor, great actor, legendary actor, amazing character, amazing appearances, one of the best supporting character, not really supporting, but guest characters in Voyager's history. Nothing. Why? We're celebrating the journey. Like, let us stop and take pictures every now and then. Who else? The Equinox crew. Nothing. Equinox crew was like the mirror universe Voyager, what Voyager could have become, what people thought Voyager might be in the early days before it just fell into routine and just became like a version of Next Generation. Nothing. Why? Even the Delta Flyers podcast, they briefly mention it. They've been keeping the legacy. Tom Paris and Harry Kim, like Robert Duncan McNeil and Garrett Wong, have been keeping this podcast going for so long, and they're so amazing and just barely mentioned. Tell the fans, tell the people watching that's out there, push it in their face, let them know they can still get more Voyager, they can still live Voyager, breathe Voyager with the actors who played it, revisiting the journey for real. Tell them about it. I'm putting it up, sorry. Soapbox alert. Go call the ambulance. Talk about these actors, talking about the characters. Lieutenant Ayala, if you watched the 100th episode celebration of this channel, that was the question I brought up because I love the character of Ayala. He had maybe 3 lines in all of Voyager. I think most of them were off screen as well. But he was in more episodes than 7 of 9. He was there from episode 1 all the way to the end. Season 7. Ayala is the longest running extra. Tarek Ergen, the actor, longest running extra in all of Star Trek history. In the background was Chakotay's second in command on the Valjean before they become Voyager crew. He's always there. He's omnipresent. And I just latched on to this character back in the day when Voyager was running because I thought, yes, he's there. That's the guy. That's the guy that was there before. And you start to notice, like, wow, the continuity. He's not a main character. He's not speaking. He's not doing anything. But he's always there. It's showing that this crew is real. They are alive. It's a living, breathing crew that's lost in the Delta Quadrant. They don't have an unlimited supply of extras. They are there. Nothing. No interview with Tarek Ergen. No talk about Ayala. No talk about that record-breaking run as an extra. And also the actor did more than just Ayala. And he was even in the movie Generations. He was in Enterprise. Nothing. Why? To the journey. We left half our party behind at the last rest stop. How is this the journey? We forgot most of our people. That's what broke my heart. That's what hurt the most. I wanted to see that after Scott McDonald just crushed it in the beginning with his amazing contribution to this documentary. Think of all the new perspectives we could have gotten from all of these other supporting actors, guest actors, extras who were there the whole time. Nothing. That's what hurt. That's my one major disappointment. I have gripes. That's my disappointment for this documentary. And I'm sticking to it. Yeah. Soapbox alert over. That's what it is. But yeah, it goes on talking about a lot of the things that we've gone over, we've heard over the years, like the possible Janeway and Chakotay romance and why that wouldn't work out, and why Janeway, I think Kate Mulgrew is right, why that would be a terrible idea for both of the characters, especially her character. I think, okay, here's one that I'll find interesting. Yeah, let's do yellow alert on this one. One thing I heard of long time ago, but I don't know, I just threw it out of my mind, just never really considered looking into it. I just threw it like, oh yeah, okay, went on. I never realized how much tension there was when Ronald D. Moore came in after Deep Space Nine, came into Voyager very briefly. I think they said it was only like 2 or 3 months before he quit. The kind of clashing he had with his former partner in TNG, Brandon Braga, who was now showrunner for Voyager at that time, how the pair is finally back together, but then that was oil and water. They had a huge falling out. lot of negative feelings, and he left. I heard about that, but it just never stuck with like, oh, that's a thing. I wonder why. They go into it, and they're now older. Of course, you have Ronald D. Moore in here. You have Brandon Braga in here. They're now older. They're a lot more mature. So they both basically take responsibility for their own egos at the time and not being more receptive of their friend, of their partner. So it's good to see that maturity there, and they say they're friends now. But I wasn't aware of how bad it was, to the point where Ronald D. Moore wouldn't even go to the wrap party for Voyager. So that was kind of shocking. But again, they do mention that him leaving Voyager, which I heard led him to go make Battlestar Galactica remake, which is, again, if you haven't seen that, that is one of the best sci-fi pieces of the early 2000s. Love that series. So thank God it didn't work out for him at Voyager. We would have missed that greatness there. The ideas he wanted to use for Voyager, basically, he could incorporate in his own series of BSG. And yeah, we lucked out. So we got Voyager, and we got another great sci-fi show. So I think it worked out. But I'm glad we see that. But I'm not going to gripe too much more. I'm not going to complain too much more. I will just mention one more thing. There is a running thing throughout here, which, again, it was fun to watch, but it had me thinking, why? Garrett Wang goes on one of those zero-G flights. He goes to, like, that they used to train astronauts, so they take him up in the plane, they take him, like, tell him how to do it, like show him the train, give him a uniform. So he goes on one of the flights where they fly the parabola, and you experience zero Gs and what it's like to really be in space. So Garrett Wang got to experience like true space flight weightlessness there, and it's fun watching it happen. It's interspersed the segments throughout the documentary, and at the end, basically when they're doing the ending credits, they use a lot of clips from there, like throwing like a toy or a model of Voyager, and kind of very, very heavy on the kind of recreating the opening sequence of Voyager really in zero G. But I watched it with my brother, and we both like, what was that for? It was fun to watch. It's like, why? Like, it just Garrett Wang going on the zero-G flight, which I'm sure was exciting for him. He seems scared. I would be terrified. I don't think I could do it. But what was the purpose for this documentary? Like, there just seemed to be, it seemed to be just a little bit of fluff. And when you combine that with, I keep using the word, very surface level coverage of everything else in the documentary, it leaves you with a feeling of, like, what was the aim of this documentary? What was their goal? Like, was it sabotage because of the pandemic that pretty much denied them access to a lot of things, eating up a lot of time, eating up a lot of budget? I can sympathize with them, and please understand, I'm happy with what I'm seeing. I love watching these people, but I don't know, when you compare it to a literal masterpiece of what they made with Deep Space Nine, What We Left Behind. Like, even if you don't want to dig into the darker elements, even if you don't want to dig into the scandal, the nitty gritty, the negative stuff, the dirt behind the scenes, if you want it to be a celebration of journey, I don't know if they gave enough to celebrate. They gave us a reflection of it, but I don't think they gave it the attention it deserved, the detail it deserved. Like I said, these actors who were left out, whether that was because of, again, pandemic, how are you going to get everyone? People can't travel, people can't all be in the same room together back then. I understand that, but why not on Zoom? Why not online? Like, especially Ayala, favorite character Voyager, one of my favorite characters. I love him as much, if not more, than the main cast, and the Voyager cast is my crew. Ayala was my spirit animal I'm glad they didn't say a Kuchimoya in this documentary. But Ayala was my spirit animal when I was watching. And okay, let me share a story with you. Let me share a story. If you're still watching me whine, a middle-aged man whining about a documentary at this point. But let me share with you a very personal story, since I'm going on about Ayala all this time and Voyager being my crew. Voyager came out in 1995. Okay, had a very short first season. I was so excited when it came out because that was the first Star Trek that I was there as a fan from episode 1. I started watching Star Trek in the beginning of season 2 of Deep Space Nine. That's when I really got into it. So I was there for the end of TNG. I was there from the early days of Deep Space Nine, but Voyager was really my first start. So I was there. I was recording on my VCR every week, sitting there next to the TV to pause the tape to make sure I don't get commercials. Got some of them, but I wanted to have these episodes so I could just watch again and again. Well, that same year, in fall of 1995, I and my family, we were in a very severe car accident where I broke my arm. Massive damage internally. I broke my spine in 2 places. A lot of things are shattered. My body does not move the way it should. So I was in the hospital for a bit, probably pulled out of the hospital by my father earlier than I should have been. And I'm back home in my house, freezing cold, old house in Pennsylvania. And I can't sleep. I'm up pretty much all night until probably about 4, 5, 6 in the morning. When the sun starts coming up, that's about when I go down for a few hours. So I'm up all night in my old drafty house. Everyone else is asleep. And it's just me in my back brace, my arm immobile, me basically immobile. And the only thing I really had were those Star Trek Voyager tapes that I recorded. And I had season 1. And I just watched season 1 again and again and again. Every night I'm just watching the episodes. And that was me on Voyager. My sofa was one of the seats on Voyager. My microwave, I would go get my this is not a plug, but if you're watching, anyone there watching, and you could ship it to Japan, if you have any Stouffer's frozen dinners, you could send to me, because we would stock up these Stouffer's frozen meals. Love the tuna noodle casserole. Microwave, that was my replicator. I was on the ship and they were my crew. They were supporting me. I was there with them. And I did not have a voice in that crew because they're on TV and I'm just sitting there almost completely immobile in most of my body, just in my head, in my imagination. Who do I see? I see the character Ayala. He is there. And he doesn't have a voice either. So I put me basically in his spot. Not really him, but I figure when he leaves the bridge, when he leaves the scene, when he walks out, I'm in one of those rooms with him, my character, who I am on Voyager. I'm one of those people who are always there, but we don't have a voice, but we are there and we are supporting and we are doing our part. So he was an important character for me. The fact that he's not in here, that breaks my heart, because Voyager got me through such a rough time, and he was my spirit animal in Voyager. And when I saw him in later seasons, later episodes, again and again and again, that just maintained my connection with the series and feeling like I was part of it. Because if he's still there, and not like O'Brien getting more lines and growing bigger and bigger, he's there. He's just there doing his job in the background where he's needed. That means I'm still there too. I'm still there with them. That was what was in my head. That was what was keeping me going through. And that's why Voyager is so special to me. And that's why maybe I'm a little too picky on this. That's why I wanted more. I want something better than what we left behind. Amazing thing. I love what we left behind. But I wanted something better because this is my show. This is my crew. And I love all of those actors. I feel so bad for the problems they went through. I feel so bad for the struggles they went through as actors, not the characters, as actors. Like, I respect them. So I wanted this to be the best documentary ever. And it is a good, fun documentary, but it is certainly not the best. And that sucks. That's sad. But other people, you might like it a heck of a lot more. You might not have heard these stories because you might not be as obsessed with watching all these behind the scenes stuff and all these clips and all these things. Again, I can't go to any of the conventions, so I watch the conventions on YouTube. Maybe you haven't seen before, so this is all going to be new to you. For you, enjoy. And I'm so sorry I didn't say that earlier. I was too wrapped up in my own head. But for you, enjoy, because this is going to be a beautiful journey. But for those of us who wanted a deeper journey, like Deep Space Nine got, I think it's going to be a bit of a letdown. You'll probably find the fun in it. You'll probably find the joy in it. But I don't think you're going to come away satisfied. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Sorry about that. I guess I could have left this small video later. But do I recommend this? Of course. With all that negativity that it sounds like I'm spewing. And I apologize to anyone involved. I apologize to everyone involved. I apologize to other Star Trek fans. I apologize, Voyager fans. Nobody deserves to hear some whiny little guy complaining. I'm just sharing how I feel. I'm happy. I love this documentary. I love you all out there. Fans, people, everyone. I love all of you that make Star Trek what it is. I'm just expressing that I would have liked more. Ronald D. Moore. Hey, see. So that's it. I think I covered my feelings about this documentary. I do recommend it. I do think it's worth watching. I just don't think it's going to rival the masterpiece of Deep Space Nine's What We Left Behind. So if you're expecting that, if you haven't seen it and you're expecting that, you're not getting that level of detail, but you're getting Voyager. And if you love Voyager, take it. You can't go wrong with that. Okay, enough of my rambling as it is. Thank you for watching if you stayed this long. Apologies if I offended anyone with my opinions on this, but take care, everyone. As always, stay safe out there, my friends. Live long and prosper. Peace and long life. I'll see you.